Hello, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in to our next Creek Show virtual artist talk. Today, I'm going to be talking to Scott Specht of Specht Architects. They are behind the art installation volume from Creek Show 2015. Hey, Scott.
Hey there.
How's it going?
Good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me to this. This is fun to revisit the project.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
Sure.
So yeah, I'll pass it over to you if you want to tell me a little bit about volume. Talk to me about the design process, the installation process, and your experience with Creek Show.
Yeah, it was a great experience, and I think probably the most interesting thing about our installation and the process is actually the things that didn't go right. And I think I always find that more interesting to talk about and people to listen to failures in some ways than things that did go perfectly. So I'll talk about it in this case in particular. I think in our architecture work, we're really careful about planning the whatever types of construction we do with the budget, with everything else, and it all works pretty seamlessly and we work it out. Here we got very excited about the artistic possibilities and that they're really, as long as we were willing to put in the labor ourselves, we could do what we wanted. And I think that led to kind of biting off more than we can chew, quite frankly. So the things we got excited about were the concept of using the water directly in some way, as opposed to using it as a backdrop or just a pretty, ground for whatever installation we had. So we really wanted to use the site and the water. And the original proposal was inspired by these water sculptures that Noguchi did for Expo 67. And there it was, his idea was he put these boxes up on columns and had them shoot water down at a really high volume into the pool of water. And it was kind of like these rockets taking off in the pond. And it was like, man, if we could pull off something like that, that would be really exciting and dramatic. So we went and looked at the site, and we picked this particular location because it had a very, very long, it was like a 130-foot long stone wall that it was already existing there. And the walkway wrapped around it. So it was a great backdrop. And so our concept was to do a fountain, which spilled water off of the edge, but it wasn't just a constant volume. It was something that kind of reflected the varying nature of Waller Creek, where you get floods and then you get periods of almost no water in it at all. So what this did, and we don't have a video, we have a still, but it actually, the water raked across this trough. So to go from no water, and then it would again appear, in sequence across the wall as a sheet of water for a while. So it kept repeating this sequence over and over again. We were really excited about the concept and about pulling it off and everything. But when we started to dig into it, what it involved went so much further than what we ever expected, because what we did by using the water directly meant we had to get pumps. And we talked to a person who designs water features and had them actually donate, some of the pump services and having them. But it ended up being much, much larger pumps than were required. So there are 3 huge pumps just under the water there. And this detail is showing the trough at the edge, which we had braked out of steel that runs all the way across. And that edge had to be leveled up perfectly. But so the problem with the pumps then, not only the hauling them there, and they're not disposable, so you'd have to haul them back and install them. The power supply, we had negotiated with the police station that's directly behind to use their power source. But in the end, after we got through partial construction, we found that not enough power could be provided from the outlets they had. So we ended up having to rent a generator for the entire time. Then we had to get gasoline to this generator during the entire course of Creek Show. So our valiant staff, and I'll thank everybody at the end, had to keep running out and filling the gas tank on the generator during the entire thing.
Wow.
So, getting these light sources to come perfectly from below and light the water from below up at the wall was a great thing, except that during the course of Creek Show, we did have a flood condition, and it brought tons of sediment down the creek, which all settled on this light fixture. So I remember long hours of standing in this filthy water, quite frankly, ruining pairs of shoes, cleaning off that light fixture that's down below. So it was a case, and this sometimes happens, is when you get excited about something and the content is that I think you stick with an idea that you really love, even when the circumstances start to prove, the details of it start to prove that this is much, much more difficult than you originally intended. So rather than scrapping it all and starting over with a different idea, we really put our heads down and forced our way through it. And in the end, it ended up being a success. But I think getting there was a really tough procedure. I would just say that, I know part of this is for future teams, what to think about. And I think that's a big one, because I've seen that happen. I was a juror for one of the years on for some of the other Creek Show installations. And I could see that there were incredibly ambitious things being proposed. And then to see them, how they were executed, didn't always match that original intent. And where was great. And the one I'll bring up from my year, I think that was particularly successful was, and I know she's speaking, Christy Ten Eyck's project. She's going to speak in a couple of days in this series. And the super simple concept of using pool floats, day glow pool floats, and putting them in the water on a grid and lighting them. And that was it. It was I remember having worked on this for 2 weeks at the site with everybody from my office, and they came in like a day and a half before the whole thing set it all up, and it was beautiful. So it's a lesson in that, and that's the kind of advice I'd give. One of the things that was good about it, though, was some of the feedback we got on it was really strong. Is a lot of people felt that it fit the context so perfectly that it looked like it had been designed as part of the original design for the creek, in a way, as part of the park. And because it fit right along that wall, and the walkway wrapped around it, it used the water, it used lighting. So I think there were a number of people who didn't even realize it was part of Creek Show. They thought it was just happened to be at Waller Creek, this fountain that kept going back and forth the whole time.
That's a great point.
It was interesting in that way.
Yeah, it really does fit that space really, really well.
Yeah, so that's kind of the capsule summary background of what it's about, and what challenges we faced.
Absolutely, yeah. I know you touched on this a little bit. Kind of talk to me
about shots of welding the steel pieces together. There was another issue that you don't think about when you're designing this necessarily, is getting all of the equipment and materials out of there after the Creek Show's ended. And when you weld things into place, it adds an additional challenge to it. So it was a great learning experience, and I think we were very proud of the end product. And it was just, this is installing the pumps and the tubing to get the water up to feed the trough. And there was a whole control system that went with it, with timers and everything that allowed the water to stretch along it. If this had been a permanent installation in the park or something, then it would have been appropriate for that. But as a temporary thing, I'm not so sure. So
here's another great shot.
Yeah, this is working on part of it. The challenge also was getting that water stream to flow perfectly over the edge for when it was running, and it required a lot of very fine-tuned tweaking to get that edge super level, which you run into on any fountain like this. But to do it for a temporary installation out of steel was a great challenge also. I do like some of the ones, I think it's a different experience, though, that some of the ones, there was one also that had these just very simple construction flags that were a day glow pink and made an entire field out of them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the simplest gestures here work better in this kind of setting where you have lots of people passing by in a steady motion, and you look at it for a few seconds and take a photo for Instagram, and those seem to be the ones that really have the biggest impact. So it's kind of knowing the crowd and knowing the process of how people observed it. I think our year was the second year that this happened, second or third. So the protocols hadn't really been, it wasn't a known quantity at the time, and so some early experimentation.
Yeah, definitely. You kind of learn as you go through the process, for sure.
Yeah.
And just kind of looking at this photo and, during Creek Show, what was one thing that you hoped the community took away from this installation volume?
Well, I do think this particular installation, I think, started to give a, an advanced view of what the area could be like as a true park. Something with installations that's not always not an exciting event to look at necessarily, but how pleasant it would be to be walking next to water flow and beautiful lighting in a certain way and everything else. So I think it gave more of an advanced view of the completed park, sensibilities, than being an exciting, photo worthy thing necessarily.
Yeah.
So I think in that way it was a successful project.
Yeah, definitely.
And I love since doing this, it's funny how many different thoughts and ideas have gone through our heads as to, wow, if we had a chance to do some simple, super simple ideas, use what's around successfully. So maybe there'll be a chance to do that in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add, Scott?
No, I think this is a great thing that, another Austin pioneering event, really. I mean, I haven't seen anything like this anywhere else. And, really bringing attention to something that's going to come in that at this point was going to come far in the future. It really was, Ingrid Spencer from the IA and others had the great foresight to really start something like this to get a conversation going about Waller Creek, an area that really a lot of people in Austin never even knew was there. I think it was a dramatic success in that way, because I remember going there in huge crowds coming through this thing, and it's very exciting, and I hope it picks up again. I hope even when the new park is open that this continues in different ways along different segments of the creek until the entire thing is finished in, I don't know what, 2100 or something. But no, it was great. And I would, if we're nearing the end, I would like to thank some people. Those early photographs were by Patrick Wong. They're really beautifully photographed. And the team that worked on this, Jake Novak and Travis Power and Mary Stuckert and Dawn White from our office and Brett Wolf, all did an amazing job and really went way above and beyond by getting themselves into something like this.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much again, Scott.
Thanks. And if you want to see some of our work, I know at the end you mentioned to mention our website. It's spechtarchitects.com, and we also have a new project, the Comfort Capsule. That's an idea for a remote living, working kind of experience that's going to be launched fairly soon. But if you go to comfortcapsule.com, you can take an advanced preview at that.
Cool. We'll be sure to check it out.
All right. Well, thanks so much. This was fun.
Yeah, so much fun. Thank you, Scott. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all for watching. Bye.